Hello, Huda. How are you? Thank you so
Hi,
much
Mandana.
for coming.
No worries. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. It's lovely to have you. And uh, I know I have
Fun.
dragged you and harassed you and asked you again and again to be here because I do feel that the power that a writer has, it's like, you have the power to write your own story, like rewrite your own story and do whatever you want to do. So, how are you?
I'm quite well. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you so much. Huda, tell me about your own journey, about how you came to writing.
Well, I think it was something that was sort of that came to me from a young age. I maybe it was like kind of literally conditioning at the home. So I remember that my mom used to write. She'd always have a journal. She'd always buy us when we travel, or otherwise, even if it was from city to city, she'd always ask us to write about the journey. So I think there was always this idea of having stationery at home and a very a journal or writing material at home, and we would be encouraged to write about maybe it was a daily diary or something like that. And then I think what sort of then became even more profound was when I started reading. So I'm a student of literature. I still teach literature. So I think when you get exposed to so many writers, and a lot of them are their own stories, or even if it's not their own stories, it's fiction that they write. You kind of really enjoy the process and sort of want to mimic it. I think that's how I naturally came to writing as something that I enjoy doing.
Beautiful. Okay, so as we are going through this workshop, we were focused on the inner child. And I
Yeah.
was wondering, how does this writing process, as you were saying, okay, what do you think it has done or contributed to your life as a writer to understand about your own events and memories?
Yeah, I think so. It's really I think it has a very profound impact because I feel like when a certain event or a certain episode has taken place, whether it's at whatever moment it is in your life, but let's think about like moments in childhood.
Mm.
Those are moments that have just sort of taken place, and then we carry the burden of those moments as we go on. And there are limited moments in life or limited opportunities in life where you actually go back and revisit those moments. And I think that writing becomes a way in which you can possibly, to the best of your ability, to the best of your memory, revisit those moments, but then also sort of look at emotions, sentiments that are associated with those moments, right? So those could also be. I'm not saying I'm not going to put them in a particular bracket, but they could be a spectrum of emotions that are perhaps linked with those moments. And I think writing allows you to identify them and to sort of pin them down and pen them down and also sort of see those moments from a distance, right? That you're now looking at that same situation from like a third person point of view and seeing, okay, what did once happen, and how can I, evaluate myself from a very different vantage point now. And I think writing is a great technique and a very useful tool to be able to do that.
I really believe that. I think it actually gives you freedom to see your own story from a distance, you know?
Yeah, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So I think that really liberates the whole process. Like you can look at it and say, okay, now I. So okay, so how would you like what kind of technique do you need? Any technique, or do you need some understanding, or how does one what matlab, like can for something that's so simple for you but can be something very difficult for someone, so how do you think one should start?
Because we're just talking about writing as something that's as a means to kind of understand our own selves or understand our own past. I think that the most important thing that is already out there in the world for you is your own experience, right? You don't need an addition, your own observation and your own experience. In fact, I think as William Faulkner is a very famous writer who says, writing technically involves three things. It looks at observation, it looks at experience, and it looks at imagination. So if you're looking at your own life, you don't necessarily need imagination. You already have experience
Imagine.
and observation, and you can, use both of those to come to a table or to come to pen and paper and just put those out there. So I feel like people who sort of have a hesitation in writing have not really pondered over the fact that they have the two most useful tools available to them. They have experience and they have observation. So just take the plunge from there. Use those two things to actually take the plunge.
Okay, beautifully said. What are the common emotions that challenges when writers are writing about their pain? Or would you give some
I
reference?
think um, if I would say, again, on the spectrum of emotions, I think the most important thing that any writer will sort of initially struggle with is that you are eventually being vulnerable to a page. And we are socially conditioned to not be vulnerable. We are socially conditioned to, be stoic and be very powerful and put on this facade of bravery and having it all together all the time.
Yes.
And somehow, when we come to the page, we that social conditioning is still with us. We don't let ourselves loose very, very easily. And I think that's the initial kind of hesitation that someone may feel. And then once you allow yourself to be vulnerable in terms of emotions, I think writing allows you to capture any and every emotion possible in the world, again, from the most positive of joy and exhilaration and excitement to even the most negative ones like sadness, anger, jealousy, envy, all of those.
Okay, lovely, beautifully said. Actually, when I was thinking, I would like to understand कि मुझे लगता है कि I am a person who writes in poetry. So I feel like it's a very
Mm-hmm.
abstract form of expressing your emotions, keeping me less vulnerable. And even if it is read by somebody, I don't feel like intimidated or, they could understand it because it's all
Yeah.
about. So, but I feel like journaling has never been something that simple for me because
Mhm.
journaling for me, like if I would say, okay,
Yeah, because your most uninhibited form comes across, now. Like your
yeah,
journaling is it's like I said, it's most true to observation and experience. If you're journaling your day's events or your experiences and then reflecting, I think the most uninhibited version, the most raw version may perhaps come out in journaling. But yes, I think what you said is actually very, very.
what would you recommend? Journaling, storytelling, poetry to explore your like
No,
pain.
I think that's something that sort of is that will depend vary on from person to person. I think for someone who is perhaps new to writing, I think journaling can be very, very useful because there is no rigidity or there is no it's that you have a lot of liberty to be ambiguous. There's a lot of liberty for you to convey something and leave it to the interpretation of of your readers. And I think the most kind of the only genre or the genre that allows that the most is perhaps uh, poetry. But yeah, I think it really will depend on writer to writer in terms of what is their calling in terms of genre.
Beautiful. Okay, so how does writing help in reclaiming your personal power? Like, do you think that it really does change your own perspective or your own narrative? Like,
I mean, I don't know to what extent it helps in sort of uh, like changing your narrative. I think, in fact, very, very often, I think your truest and your most accurate form of who you are, of who you see, of how you see yourself comes across in writing. So I actually don't think that it's something that allows you to fabricate or sort of change narratives. I think it's very empowering because I think one of the most beautiful things about writing is that it lets you be, for lack of better phrase, the main character of your life. I think in many ways around the world we
You're the main lead
Yeah,
character. So
yeah, you're the main character of your life, right? Or the main character of whatever it is that you're, or your, for poetic consciousness or writer consciousness or narrator consciousness is is in the spotlight at that moment. So I feel like with writing, it is very, very empowering in that way, because you get otherwise the busyness and the haze of life, you don't necessarily always have time for the self and time to sort of put yourself at priority or put yourself at the center or put yourself under the spotlight, um, in that very, very kind of main character moment. So I think writing does that. It allows you to reclaim what has been lost in the everyday and put yourself as at the center of a written word, or put your consciousness or put your story or put your narrative at the center of the written word.
thank you. Okay.
Absolutely. No worries. Bye bye.
Bye.